Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this RPG Bugbears video I'm going to be talking about people who take familiars solely as a means to get an additional bonus for their character. And let me start by saying that I don't really have anything against familiars in games per se. In the very enjoyable Broken Jade Advanced Fighting Fantasy game that I'm playing in at the minute, run by Jenny Green, the Rogue DM, and there are some actual play videos for that on my YouTube channel. My own character, Silas, has a rat familiar, so I've nothing against the concept of familiars. My grievance is really more with people who take familiars solely as an attempt to gain some sort of additional bonus for their character, or as a way of overcompensating for some sort of perceived shortcomings in their character. Now, how do you know if you've got someone like this in your game? Well, chances are, if you hear one of the following two phrases, I know I've failed this roll, but would my familiar get a roll? Or the phrase, would my familiar have noticed that? Then you may have one of these people in your game. The main source of my problem with this isn't that there's any disruption caused by the game by extra dice rolls or anything like that. After all, as a GM, you can easily resolve that by having them roll at the same time for their familiar and their character. Now, my main issue is that in a lot of such cases, these people are missing out on one of what for me is the fundamental joys of having a familiar in a game, which is the increased roleplay potential and the ability to expand your portrayal of your own character in new and interesting directions. Now, in most games where familiars are allowed or featured, they have a profound, almost mystical bond with their masters. Advanced Fighting Fantasy, for example, describes a familiar as fanatically loyal and as having an emotional and mental bond with the hero. D&D 3.5 describes a magical link and even goes so far as to say that in some senses the familiar and master are practically one being. Now, think of how attached in real life certain people get to their pets and how much emotional investment they make in. Just try and imagine how much more profound and how much more strong these feelings would be if you actually had a spiritual link with the animal in question, joining the souls together in a way. It's an often used phrase that people and their pets come to resemble each other, and I like to imagine that this is even more pronounced with familiars. For example, in the Broken Jade Advanced Fighting Fantasy game that I've just mentioned, my own character Silas has a rat familiar, and Silas is a dirty, weaselly little man who likes to nest amongst the collected items and shinies that he has accumulated for himself. His first response to danger is not to face it head on or make any sort of attack, but to scuttle away into the shadows and attempt to slowly destabilise his opposition by nibbling away at their support structures and taking a little bit here and a little bit there until they collapse under their own weight. I like to think that the rodent comparison is fairly obvious there, although I'm not vastly knowledgeable about rodents, but it's accurate enough for my purposes. I do intend to read a little bit more about them in the future, just to increase my knowledge of them and hopefully improve my roleplay of this character. Seeing a familiar as simply a means of getting a few extra dice rolls or a cheeky stat bonus for your character is not only bypassing a chance for some great roleplay potential, but you're also denying yourself a lot of enjoyment in the game and a potential additional avenue for your character portrayal that may take your ideas about role-playing the character off in new and interesting directions. And I think that would be a real shame to miss out on that. So, here's a few hints from me about how to role-play a character with a familiar. 1. Choose an animal or a creature that you find interesting to begin with, or that at least has some characteristics that you're interested in. 2. Don't be concerned with what mechanical benefits having a certain type of familiar will give you. 3. Read a little bit about your chosen animal and see if they have any characteristics that can bleed across to your character. This can really add an extra dimension to your roleplay and send it off in new and interesting directions. 4. Give some thought to the character's relationship with the familiar. After all, you have this sort of mystical soul bond with them. How does your character care for them? Do you share meals? Do you sneak them food? Does the familiar have any of their own goals, which, animalistic though they may be, you attempt to help it achieve? And 5. Introduce your familiar gradually to the other members of your party or the other characters. After all, your character will likely feel very protective over the familiar, and maybe unwilling to show it to other people, particularly in the early stages of the game when you don't really know the other characters that well and the party's just starting to sort of gel together. Here are some things also to avoid when you play a character with a familiar. 1. Don't take familiar just as an attempt to gain some additional roles or extra attempts at successes for your character. 2. Don't treat them as just an extra on your character sheet that are there when it's convenient and can be discarded when not. 3. Don't unnecessarily put your familiar in danger. After all, you share this profound spiritual link with them. Your soul is almost bonded to them in a very sort of fundamental level, and it would be a rare person who would needlessly put their own soul in danger. So there's a few hints and tips from me on do's and don'ts for how to play a character with a familiar, and also a discussion of some of what I feel are the potential pitfalls of people taking familiars in games. I'd love to hear your opinion on the matter. Maybe you've played a character with an interesting familiar, or you've found a way for it to enhance your roleplay. Maybe you're a little bit unsure about it and you have a few questions. Whatever your comments are, please drop them in the comments box down below, or hit me up in the Google Plus links. I hope if you've enjoyed this video, you'll click on like and subscribe to the channel. We put out new videos every week. And until I see you in the next video, thank you very much for watching and for listening. Take care.